What do you all find is the greatest challenge teaching dance in the public schools?
I think the sheer grind of going every single day and dealing with so many logistics and so many personalities and so many hoops to jump through, and especially in the public schools, if you're in a struggling school, it's even like multiplied. If you're in a Title I school or in high poverty, or you have a high EL population, or even I'm sure rural schools, although I don't have any experience in those schools, but just like the grind day in, day out in the trenches every single day, and it wears on you. It's just a lot. That's hard.
There's so many personalities with all of the students, and then a lot of the administrators, they have an idea of what the program should be, and then sometimes if you switch administrators, then all of a sudden you have another person's ideas of what the program should be, and it's difficult sometimes because they're looking at the whole school, and dance is sort of like the stepchild. A lot of schools don't have it, or if they have to cut something, that's what they'll cut. So you have to constantly show that
You're in constant survival mode.
it's important.
All day, every day,
Right.
it's survival mode.
I feel like I was in constant crisis mode too. I mean, I was at a Title I school for 3 years, and the students were in constant crisis. And so we were constantly managing the crises while trying to, have a high quality of performance output. And the demands from the administration, while the students were having, things come up, was definitely a strong challenge. But survival mode,
Survival mode.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's just
definite.
like you said, trying to keep your program. Like the kids are in survival mode, and they're like, who knows what happened the night before, and who knows what happened that day. I remember I emailed you one time, and you were like, hey, I haven't heard from you about something, and I was like, it was crazy, and this happened, and we were trying to have a show, and this happened. And you were like, I remember those days.
It's hard. I have great respect for the teachers that stay in those positions and really clearly make such a big difference. But y'all, something you mentioned makes me think about this evaluation. Like, how do our administrators evaluate us? For me, I went into this school and I was told, you have to win a trophy, you have to win an award. And I was like, but that's not what these kids need. These kids need something totally different from what the people on the outside looked at as the win for a dance program. And I was able to maneuver around that. And but I wonder if y'all have the same. Like, how do your administrators evaluate you, and do you feel you have to do a certain thing to get the positive?
I don't, because I feel like I've had, with all of my administrators, I've never had that as an issue, but I know there are a lot of teachers that do. But I try, if I'm working with a new administrator, or if when I first started teaching, I came right out and said, I don't want to do the drill team, I don't want to do the cheerleaders. This is what I foresee the dance program being, and this is what I would like to do, and this is why. So they already have an idea, and then they start going, oh, well, that would be good for
that's great.
problem solving, and that would be good for, and so then when I start showing them those things and how much the parents will, the parents will come to me and say, hey, I really love that piece that you did on the Holocaust, and I'll say, hey, why don't you mention it to the administrators? And then they'll, most of the time I don't have to, but like in the beginning as a new teacher, I think that's a really good method. My principal is very supportive of the dance program and of all the arts in our school, and I think that he really wants to see, I know that he really wants to see how they can work together with the academics. And we work on that a lot, and he will have the arts teachers lead workshops on how to help the students in the academic classes. So it's great in our school, but I'm not sure, you really have to educate everyone, and the parents too, because a lot of the students have been competition dancers,
Right.
and then that's all they want to do is learn dances. And when you first start teaching students, the first day of school, when are we going to start doing fouettes? That's what I get. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, you know what? You work on that already. Let's work on this. And you just have to buy in, let them buy into what you're doing. And then some of them takes a little longer than others to get. But I think once they see all the other options out there, and also showing them videos or taking them to live performances of real artistic productions, and inviting your principal when you get free tickets for things, and hopefully they'll go and they'll be educated too.
I agree a lot with that. You have to have like a really strong administration, like supportive of what you're doing. I know at our school we have a leadership team, and I was actually on the literacy leadership team this year. And I helped contribute how do you create a bridgeway between the arts and then what we're doing elsewhere. And I think when you have a system that's super supportive of that, and other teachers that are like, I want to integrate this, and I want my kids to have the authentic experience doing something they enjoy. Because not everybody's a great writer or great reader, but some people are really love dancing, and they feel something when they watch it. And being able to write that down and then to have those conversations about it is just as authentic and just as important as if they went in and read a book. I think oftentimes, especially you were talking about Title I or inner city students, a lot of times being able to digest and reflect on what they're thinking and feeling in new ways based on what they're watching can provide just an experience unlike anything else. And it creates a lot of like empathy, a lot of consideration of others, and a lot of things that students just aren't naturally always taught, and you don't naturally know about respect and self-discipline and problem solving. So I think when you have that support elsewhere, like you were saying with the administration, really the sky's the limit if the kids are willing to try, and that just comes with gaining trust and working with them, and just starting small and building your way up.
Maybe we can all talk about process versus product. Because through all those changes and through all the different teachers, they're going through a process. And the process, what are we really concerned about? Process versus product.
I have a poster in my room. There's a guy running. I don't remember the exact quote, but it's basically, it's not who wins the race, it's what you learn during the race.
Yeah.
And I always tell my students, they get really frustrated with themselves if they can't do something perfectly sometimes. And I said, I say, calm down, you're gonna get it. Well, I gotta get it before the show. And I'll say, well, you've got 3 weeks, we'll work on it. And if you really don't have it, we'll adjust it to make it look to something where you're confident. And I'm never gonna get it. And then if we get to that point and I have to change it, sometimes they'll be like, no, I don't want to change it. I want to do it now. Like, I've worked on it and it might not be perfect. Will you be mad at me if it's not perfect? No, because you know what? You did it perfectly in class. And to me, you've learned. And that's what matters. If you're not perfect in the show, you're definitely going to be better than you were when you started.
But how awesome that they worked on something for 3 weeks to get it kind of perfect and didn't give it up. And they're willing to try it. Like, that's way more valuable in life. You teach at an art school. So for your kids to come in and say, I'm really jealous of this, but for them to come in and say, like, when are we going to get to, what did you say? When are we going to get to?
To do fouettes.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't love that. Like the fouettes, like everybody's like, when can I learn this trick? When can I learn that? It's not about learning tricks for us. It's
I'm just jealous that there's
developing.
In my school, my experience was there were, like, the kids that got put in dance. Because there was nowhere else to put them. So they just ended up in dance. Like, I don't want to dance. I'm like, I understand. And I've also taught music before. And that's another struggle, is that you kind of have to be versatile or constantly protecting your program in public schools. So I didn't do that well in music, protecting my program. And so it shifted later to something else, to dance. But I couldn't get them to sing. I really could not ever get anybody to sing. If they just got placed in the class, I mean, I looked at my choir of 43 and it was like 35 freshman boys and 7 sophomore and junior girls. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great.
Oh.
But what I learned from that is in dance, I could at least get somebody to walk, stylized walking.
Right.
So we could build from that. But it was mostly like a trash bin. So how do you get over that?
What's the buy-in, right? Like, how do you get people to buy into what you're doing in the classroom? Whether it's we're not going to do fouettes, we're going to do this other thing that's going to develop skills, or whether it's not about the final performance, it's about the process, or whether it's, come on, you guys, I know you're really insecure about your bodies and your movements and you're too cool, but let's do something. I remember creating dances that were literally walking patterns across the floor, and it was like slowly it would evolve to where the walking pattern was more and more complex, and then there was some improvisation and the students kind of bought in. But I guess what are the strategies to get your students to buy in so that they're moving?
I think it's different, obviously, depending on what situation you're in. And as a teacher, you have to say, okay, this is my situation. Where do I want my students to go from here to what's my goal?
Right.
And then as long as you have moved forward towards that goal, you can't be too disappointed with yourself. I mean, if you have a group of students who didn't even want to be in the class to begin with, and, you know, by the middle point of the year, you at least have them up and attempting to do something, that's a huge accomplishment.
Well, Allison has done amazing work in that area, actually. Like, I guess the question is really for you, because you have gotten your dance students to buy in, and I know you did with the technology work you did with TPAC one time, that you talked a lot about these kids really all of a sudden becoming so hugely invested in the work, and you know, and I feel like part of it was because they had a product.
They did have a product.
Like-
The product is actually important because it makes it tangible.
Right.
For them,
But
yeah.
my product, maybe I need to change it. Like the product for the student seemed like to be really important because they wanted to present, and it wasn't real until they were on a stage or they were recorded
Right.
or something. But I had to get the product out of my head that it was okay,
Yeah.
whatever happened, it was fine. Because the process is what I cared about. I had to get really creative, and I had to let a lot of things go as far as being like professional, and not professionalism like as far as being a teacher, but looking at the product and be like, what in the world is that? But getting some sort of thing. I had to input, in order to get the kids to buy in, I had to put in what I was passionate about and continue being vulnerable with what I loved, because they could tell, like, you know, they can smell fear and they can smell when you don't know things. And I had to like throw in things that that fired me up in the morning, that like made me keep going to work, that made me, so things like social justice issues and what, like Black Lives Matter movement and just like civil rights movements and the current Women's March and things like that. Like I had to pull from things that mattered to me and continue being vulnerable and putting them in the classroom and saying, what do y'all think about this? How can we show that on a stage? Or technology, like I really enjoy it, but it bothers me to a certain degree that it's taking over our lives and you can't talk to anybody. So I had to bring that issue up, and that's where we came up with this program, like, what does your life look like when you're ruled by technology? And let's make a dance about it. And just these really deep things that I get excited about. They can't help get excited when you get excited. But also they can like spit in your face as well. So, I mean, don't, it's not 100%. You have to keep being honorable, at least for me.
You know, but you know, you're talking to what we talked about earlier, actually, without maybe intending to, but how do we feed our creative spirits as artists while we're teaching? How do we take the things that we feel passionate about, which stems from our love of dance? You know, how do we take that and share that with our students? And it's interesting because the more it's relevant to us, the more they buy in. You know, I remember my students were not interested in modern or contemporary dance at all, but I was very passionate about it. And I think that really, they saw how movement was very cathartic for me, and they embraced that. And then they started exploring this style that you never would have expected from my community.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the students going, I get it now, I get it. And I was like, wow, deep. But because they saw how much it fed me and how passionate I was about it, and then it became the thing in their own way. Like, they took it and did what they needed to do or wanted to do with that style of movement, and it became something that they were passionate about as well.
The primary technique that I teach is ballet. And a lot of kids come in there thinking, oh, I don't want to do ballet. Well, I know I have to do ballet. And that's not a very good attitude.
Like, oh, great. I'm so glad to have you in my class.
And I've taught everything, except for like African dancer. And they haven't seen me do other things. So every now and then, we have another teacher who primarily teaches modern. I'll teach a modern class, and they're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I'm like, sure, if you call yourself a dancer, you need to be able to do every style. And you can't just say, I only do ballet or I only do modern. Because if you do, you don't have control of your body. If you look at amazing dancers, it's not just people who can do one style. It's people who can control their body in any way that they want. And I have a lot of students who tell me, oh, I used to hate ballet until you taught me. And I was like, well, that's, that makes me feel good. And then I'll ask them, well, why? Well, you explain what it's supposed to feel like, look like, and then when I do it, I know if I've got it right, or I know what to do. I may not be able to do it, but I know what I'm supposed to do to get there. And so that's what I like. And that's what I liked as a student when I was training, is I always knew in that style, oh, nope, didn't do it right this time. But in other styles, like jazz, you're kind of like, I guess I got this, So that was the one thing, like in ballet, it's more methodical. So then you can find ways to approach different students. Like those kids that like that structured thing, they'll like ballet, even if they think they don't. And those kids that want that more open-ended. We do a lot of improvisation, and it's funny because when I say, okay, we're going to do some improvisation, and I give them a topic or an idea, a concept or something, they will a lot of times start doing ballet steps. Yet I've seen them improvise in another room. I'm like, I don't want to see ballet steps. I want you. And so then they understand, okay, she's not just the ballet teacher. She's trying to teach us everything. So I said, your technique is never going to go away. You're always going to maintain that. So don't think about it. It's going to be there. And they're like, oh, okay. So it's really cool. Like, I just feel like you said, if you approach your situation and you say, what do I do well? And you take that and you try to give it to whoever will take it, even if they don't all want it, then at least you'll have a few, and then the rest, then you can open up what you're teaching to bring the rest in. So
the methodical teacher is you. I'm like on the opposite end of this spectrum.
You're the creative and you're the structure. You guys have to connect.
you kind of have to be that way.
Yeah. You need a little of both. I think it's interesting talking about improvisation, because I do a lot of improvisation and contact improvisation in my teaching, and I used it a lot in the high school. And for me, what's interesting is this idea of making pictures with your body, like, look, I'm dancing, it's improv, versus this going deep and training your body to do the thinking and just letting go of all of those ideas of what we're supposed to look like when we dance is a really, especially with high school students, it's a really fun thing to explore if you can slowly step them through a process of letting go of thinking about what they look like.
That's actually where I started last year. Last year was my first year. So I walked into a room where I wasn't the teacher that they thought that would be there at the beginning of the year. And so we actually started with symmetry and asymmetry.
Oh, wow.
And like, what is neutral? Like how do we walk? How do we move? And I took pictures of them and turned them in like black and white so they could see the way the body could move. But starting in that like that position was super, super great. Because after that activity, I was like, look how like artistic, like you look so artsy. And they're like, I do look good. I was like, see, anybody can do this.
Awesome.
But starting like in that like natural, like how does your body just naturally move? I definitely.
And I
feel
have to
connected
start
with
at that natural.
Yeah,
Let's just
yeah.
walk. Can we just walk? Please, you don't have to dance.
Right.
I know you don't want to be here. Let's just walk. And we're going to walk across the stage. We're going to walk at different beats. And we're going to walk at different, and then, I don't know, it's just a constant. It's constantly trying to think outside the box as the teacher. And the better I got at it, the more I was able to put like their thinking outside the box. I was able to put the burden on them more, on the students. Like in the beginning, it was me. Like, how can I just get through tomorrow? I got to come up with something. I got to do something. I've got to figure out how to. And then the better I got at it, the more I was able to be like, okay, the responsibility is on me, for sure, to lead you somewhere. But all of that out of the box thinking is going to have to go back to the student eventually. So like, it can be very cut and dry in the beginning, but I need to move it to where they're going through those difficult processes and out of the box thinking and like all of that, just like I do, because that's one of the things I love about dance and movement in general, or the arts in general, is that you need to be an engineer to be an artist. You know, you need to be a problem solver. You need to be able to think on your feet. You need to be able to maintain a structure. You need to be able to be a team player. You need to be able to shine when it's time to shine. Like, there's just so many things inside the arts that make the world a better place. They break down barriers. I believe that. I believe that what we do
Absolutely.
is something that can break down barriers. It can break down cultural barriers.
Yeah.
It can hopefully to a more multicultural and more open-minded world, a better place that ends systems of oppression because we build empathy. You mentioned empathy at the very beginning. That's one of the things I love seeing in the classroom is when they start thinking about other people. And that's part of that, to me, I think that the arts does that bridge, or better visualized, breaks down the barrier so that now I can empathize with somebody else. And so hopefully we can start ending systems of oppression in the world and make the world a better place.
I think
shiny rainbows.
something you said,
But real.
I think everybody can dance, and it's interesting because people have this idea that they can't. Like, I can't. Adults are really funny about it. Like,
feet.
yeah, like, but you can move. You can stand up. You can move. Anybody with any body can dance, as long as you understand that this is my body and I'm going to move it the way that makes sense for me to move it, and that is dance. You know. But I think people really get bogged down by this idea that it's a specific step or something. But I think that's why it's such a great way to teach just about anything, because anybody can do it and have this like tangible physical experience with their learning. But I agree.
One thing that I find a lot of my students lack, not just in the dance studio, but in the academic classroom as well, is confidence.
Yeah.
And I'm a strong believer that not everyone should get a participation award for anything. And I think part of the reason why some of our students lack confidence is because they've always been told you're good, and they know that that's not necessarily truthful. But when they're in a dance class and they see themselves being successful at something or solving a problem with another student or a group of people on how to do something, their confidence is developed when the other students that watch it go, wow, I really like the way you did that because you did this and you avoided this happening, and they start building that self-confidence, just like, you know, an English teacher would have someone write something and say, you know, this is excellent the way you phrase this and why, instead of just saying.
And
that's
after
good.
the art making, having that reflection piece.
Right.
So after you do the art making, you go back and you reflect and you look at it. And it's not always great.
Right.
And so that's that part, like not everybody's fantastic and not every performance is fantastic. Can you go back and look at yourself and be like, okay, what am I going to do next time? Right. Or what did they do well? Or what did they not do well? And I mean, that's a great skill I still film myself to watch myself, and I can't even, and it still takes me a few days after the performance to go back and be like, okay, now I can watch it. Like I needed a little bit of time in between, but going back and seeing it and being able to look at myself critically and be like, yeah, that wasn't so great. I'm okay, but that wasn't great. And how can I fix that? Is such a valuable confidence builder. Next time you're on the stage, you're like, oh yeah, I remember I looked great on this. I'm confident in how, not just, but also the body that you're in.
Yeah, I think it's being vulnerable, like you're saying, like you're doing a self-reflection piece, and I think oftentimes teachers get lost in, it is my job to know everything, but in reality, the best teachers are the best students first and foremost, and I think, and that might have just been this year for me, going in and being like, wow, that was a really bad teaching day for me, like, and it wasn't y'all, like, I did that multiple times this year. I was like, that was not y'all, that was me. And just my own trial and error.
And I think they appreciate that when you say that, and they're like, "Oh no, we could have done better." And
We weren't helping you out. I think we're so caught up in failures and successes, and they're just experiences. Every experience is a learning experience.
And what made you love dance to begin with? It was that fleeting moment where you just felt alive. And it's, I think, especially with like we were talking about like the drill team or majorettes or competition, and you get so caught up on, does it look good when I do it? Does it not? Rather than,
do I feel
like I've improved, like, or I can watch something and I feel something. And for a lot of kids, I think they oppress their own feelings or thoughts so that they go to school and they're ready. They have to pretend that they don't care, but you all have those kids that they sit there and out of the corner of their eye, you can tell they're listening, and then they like ace the test at the end. And I'm like, why do you feel you have to do that? So like going back and reminding ourselves, I think, to go back and be like, okay, why did I do this to begin with? Well, I think everybody has their own story to tell. And I tell my kids that you all have a story that you bring to the table, and you can bring it out onto the dance floor in a judgment-free space, but you all have to be on that same page. That we come in and everybody is vulnerable and everybody's gonna make mistakes. Some people are gonna have successes, and everyone's gonna learn at different rates. And how I teach might not be how you learn, and how you learn might may not fit typical school structure, but that doesn't mean you can't be successful elsewhere, and that doesn't mean you can't be successful with other teachers and other days.